Welcome to one of the most famous lost ancient cities in the world. Come with us on a journey through the city of Pompeii. Pompeii is an ancient city located near Naples in the Campania region of Italy. This UNESCO World Heritage Site is famously known for being lost to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius on the 25th of August 79 AD, leaving the city buried under 4 to 6 meters of volcanic ash and pumice. Sitting at the bottom of one of the most famous volcanoes in Europe, Pompeii attracts approximately 2.5 million visitors annually. Largely preserved under the ash, the excavated city offers a unique snapshot of Roman life, frozen at the moment it was buried. There are very few sites like this in the world, and it gives us an extraordinarily detailed insight into the everyday life of its 20,000 inhabitants. Although known for its Roman remains visible today, dating from 79 AD, it was built upon a city dating from almost 1,000 years prior. The first settlement dates back to the 8th century BC, when the Oscans, a people of central Italy, founded a village in the area. With the arrival of the Greeks around 740 BC, Pompeii entered the orbit of the Hellenic people, with the Greek and Phoenician sailors using Pompeii as a port. There are still structures and buildings visible from that era today, most notably the Doric Temple and the Temple of Apollo. Over the next few hundred years, the city would change hands through several wars between the Etruscans, Samnites, and later the Romans. The city bears the scars of previous battles and sieges, but most notably, a massive earthquake that damaged parts of the city in 62 AD, 17 years before the eruption of Vesuvius that entombed the city. Soon after the burial of the city, survivors, and possibly thieves, came to salvage valuables from the buildings. There is wide evidence of post-eruption disturbance, including holes dug through the walls. The city was not completely buried, and the tops of the buildings would have been above the ash, making it obvious where to dig or salvage. Some of the salvagers left traces of their passage, with archaeologists finding graffiti saying "house dug" in some areas. Over the following centuries, its name and location was forgotten, with further eruptions covering the remains more deeply. It wasn't rediscovered until 1592, when digging underground aqueducts through the area. However, the discovery was kept quiet, and it wasn't until 100 years later that it was finally rediscovered. Exploration and excavation of Pompeii started with the Spanish in 1738, but it wasn't until the French occupied Naples in 1799 that major excavations took place. Astonishingly, objects were well preserved for almost 2,000 years, as a lack of air and moisture allowed little to no deterioration of the city. Sadly, however, once exposed, Pompeii has been subject to weathering, erosion, light exposure, water damage, poor methods of excavation, tourism, vandalism, and heck, even bombs dropped during World War II. Unfortunately, some of the earliest pictures taken show some bright and vibrant paintings and frescoes, some of which are very deteriorated today. Around Pompeii, you may run into casts of human figures. These figures were human bodies entombed in the ash. Over time, these bodies decayed, leaving voids. These voids were found by archaeologists and were used as molds to make plaster casts. These casts give us a very unique and often gruesome look into the tragic final moments of these people's lives. Coming to Pompeii is quite an experience and can be quite humbling and centering, something you may not feel or realize when exploring other sites. That's because of the humanity here. Most of the sites aren't frozen in time the way Pompeii is. You realize that these people are the same as you or I, individuals going about their daily lives with jobs, ambitions, and futures ahead of them. Something often forgotten about when looking at ancient ruins and sites. It can be easy to look at these ruins as a simple observer, just another old building, forgetting that these were buildings and houses, and were truly someone's property and livelihood. The people that lived here decorated the walls with beautiful frescoes, collected art, had parties, and even went out drinking at the local cantina. A lot of parallels with you or I today. You can see the popular trends at the time, how people decorated, and how the city functioned on its day-to-day, something not found in other ancient sites elsewhere. The best way I can describe the experience one feels being here is to simply imagine your home being frozen in time and a tourist 2,000 years in the future walking through the ruins of your house, seeing how you lived, your decorating style, the possessions you held dear, the life you led. It's quite a startling realization that your existence on this planet is but a blink of an eye in the sands of time. People have lived their lives, had friends, families, goals, and ambitions thousands of years before you, and will probably continue to do so for thousands of years after we're long gone. That can be a very humbling experience. The house of Julia Felix was originally her own home and residence. However, after the major earthquake in 62 AD, she converted portions of it into apartments available for rent and other parts for public use. Excavations of the site started in 1755, and the remains of the estate can be visited today. The walls are still covered with frescoes, and the summer baths are some of the most extravagant aspects of the property. These baths overlook the gardens and incorporate small pools and fully functioning waterfalls. The amphitheater of Pompeii is the oldest surviving Roman amphitheater. Built around 70 BC, the current amphitheater is the oldest Roman amphitheater known at the time to have been built out of stone. Previously, they had been built out of wood. The next Roman amphitheater known to be built out of stone was the Colosseum in Rome, which postdates it by over a century. We found getting around Italy to be incredibly easy. The train system is very easy to use and can get you from one city to another quite reliably and cheaply. We took the train from Rome to Naples, then jumped on the Napoli-Sorrento Circumvesuviana line. Now that's a mouthful. That took us directly to Pompeii. The ride was approximately half an hour long, but was absolutely excruciating. It was a pretty hot day, in the mid-30s, and unfortunately the train was packed. We were pressed shoulder to shoulder, back to back against other sweaty people. To avoid these crowds, arriving early would be a very good idea. We didn't get to Pompeii until around 11 o'clock. It would be good to know that it was a very good opportunity to be pickpocketed, so keep your wits about you and your belongings close at hand. After the short train ride back to Naples, we decided that we just had to have some authentic Neapolitan wood-fired pizza. Unfortunately, it was too late for lunch and too early for dinner, so trying to find somewhere open was a bit of a challenge. Yet after some walking, we got exactly what we came for. First settled by the Greeks in the first millennium BC, Naples is one of the oldest continuously inhabited urban areas in the world. By the 17th century, Naples had become Europe's second largest city, second only to Paris, and the largest European Mediterranean city with around 250,000 inhabitants. It's now the third largest city in Italy, and its historic city centre is the largest in Europe and has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In ancient times, Naples was called the City of Seven Castles because it was the only city in the world that boasted 7 castles within its boundaries. These castles were located in such a way as to provide powerful defense to the Gulf of Naples from naval attacks. Because we arrived in Naples so late, we only had time to check out one of these castles. The castle we saw was Castel Nuovo. Castel Nuovo, in English meaning Newcastle, was first erected in 1279 to be completed a mere 3 years later. It was a royal seat for the kings of Naples, Aragon, and Spain until 1815. The royal residence of Naples had been, until then, Castel Capuano, but the Norman ancient fortress was judged as inadequate to function, and the king wanted to build a new castle near the sea. The king gets what he wants. It's now the site of the Civic Museum and the headquarters of the Neapolitan Society of Homeland History. The castle is also famous for its crocodile pit. Now here's a cool one. The pit was used to lock up prisoners condemned for harsher sentences, but according to ancient legend, some of these doomed prisoners started mysteriously vanishing, leaving no traces behind. Apparently, the suspicious disappearances were caused by a crocodile who used to enter from an opening in the wall of the pit to bite the prisoners and drag them out to sea. Now that's gruesome. Galleria Albero is a beautiful example of 19th century architecture. The Galleria is one of the most popular shopping centers in Italy. It's located directly across from the San Carlo Opera House. It was built between 1887 and 1891 and was the cornerstone of the decades-long rebuilding of Naples. The Galleria was named after Umberto I, the King of Italy at the time. It was meant to combine businesses, shops, cafes, social life, public space with the private space and the apartments on the 3rd floor. The glass ceiling is absolutely staggeringly beautiful. One could spend hours sitting there over a coffee just marveling at the beauty. Naples really is a beautiful city. We honestly just did not have enough time to take it all in. I suggest if you're planning a trip to Pompeii and Naples, spend at least an entire day at both. It'll give you the opportunity to see everything you want at both sites without having to rush. Plus, it'll give you the opportunity to relax and take in some of the beautiful nightlife and restaurants that Naples has to offer after your time in Pompeii. Thank you so much for following along on our travels through Pompeii and Naples. It was a very memorable experience and was a proper capstone to our travels around Italy. We saw so much and had a spectacular time. Thanks for coming along on the journey, and hopefully it's inspired you to create some memories and travel to Italy as well. You will not be disappointed. Now, we just have to wait and see where our travels take us next. And as always, happy travels.